What's going on, everyone? Today was a crazy day as half the market closed in the green today and the other half closed down in the red. As we could see, a lot of the big tech stocks took quite the beating as some pretty big chip news came out. And we're definitely going to cover this because this is pretty crazy. And as many of you probably already know, some of these big chip stocks like Nvidia, AMD, TSM, and a handful of other ones just took a beating. So that's some big news that we'll cover, but we're also heading into the most exciting part of the earnings week. And if you thought today was volatile, you've seen nothing yet. So Tom, let's jump right into it.
Yeah, the SPY had a pretty rough day overall, and we can see that pretty much right whenever pre-market opened up this morning, the SPY was moving to the downside, and futures were actually falling off a little bit last night as well. So I'm watching the SPY today, Mike, and I was like, wow, that is one hell of a pullback. It actually dropped quite lower, and we're starting to test this recent support right around 555 to 556. I thought that the price action today towards the end of the day was okay. You know, SPY started to form a support, but it got pretty choppy. And honestly, there was no real opportunities towards the end. But the overall market was dropping quite a bit today. And like you said, these chip stocks started falling off in a crazy way. Look at Nvidia, the way that it powered down today, down 6.62%. Taiwan Semiconductors was down 7.98%. And as you mentioned, there was news here with chip stocks. So number one, there was some Trump comments with the chip stocks, which isn't good. He actually said some stuff about Taiwan should pay for like the U.S. defending them against China. So that was a pretty big hit to Taiwan Semiconductors. And then number two, the Biden administration is considering using a wide sweeping rule to kind of hit some of these chip companies for exporting their good chips, we'll say, to China, right? So I know that we've talked a lot about that before, Mike, where, NVIDIA is kind of banned from selling China some of their top stocks. But as we know, China finds ways around certain things.
No doubt. So the main thing to take away is that in Chipland, today was a bad day, a pretty bad day, and for multiple reasons. Not only did Nvidia and AMD and TSM sell off in a main way, but we also have TSM set to report earnings tomorrow, which kind of just crushes any of the bullish sentiment that already existed with that stock. On top of that, we had another chip-related company report earnings today, which is ticker symbol ASML, and even that one was pretty brutal, Tom, as it fell by 13%. So the biggest takeaway with this news is that when you look at these chip stocks over the past couple of months and even over the past couple of years, they have been leading the market, especially so far this year. As you could say, the AI bubble continued to get bigger and bigger, but it's important to understand that the way in which these stocks are moving is changing, and this is not something to be scared of. It's just something to adapt to because a whole bunch of traders out there right now are going to look at ASML and Nvidia and AMD and TSM and, think that they are the same stocks as they were a couple weeks and months ago. But markets change, positioning changes. You could say market expectations and sentiment changes, and if you don't adapt to those changes, you're going to be on the wrong side of the game, you could say. But either way, keep a close eye on these chip stocks going forward, because in the same way that they move up in a crazy volatile way, the same thing happens in reverse.
Yeah, they do. And I think it's really important to kind of look at some of these other pullbacks on this huge uptrend that we've been on, right? Like if we look at Nvidia from the beginning of the year, it's been great. There's been an awesome move up, and there was actually a pretty big pullback mixed in around March to April. So I'm looking at that pullback and I'm like, wow, like how big of a pullback was that? And like how crucial has this pullback already been here? So that was 21% so far from the high here. Nvidia at the low of day today is right around 16%. So we're not even to the pullback from March to April. But what I noticed is that, we're not really in that time frame yet, right? Like we've only been pulling back here for a couple weeks to about a month. Whenever I start to look at this, it was like a more of a 2-month pullback. But the thing is that the price action is definitely changing, Mike. And some of these candles that we're seeing and just the multi-day moves are much more volatile than the moves that were happening here, where we saw like a lot more chop on the way down. It was slow. We started to finally get like 1 or 2 good sell-offs there towards the end of that downtrend before we started roaring back. Where on this one, I feel like we're actually seeing a pretty established lower high, and then we're also starting to see this short-term support break too. So it's pretty bad price action in the short term for NVIDIA, and that volatility is definitely picking up here on this stock.
No doubt. And speaking of volatility, we're heading into that time of the year where volatility is set to increase quite a bit. So as we can see by looking at this chart, basically from July to November, during election years, we tend to see a pretty strong increase in the VIX, or the volatility index. And what this essentially represents and means in simple terms is that if you think the market's crazy now, you've quite literally seen nothing yet, because the higher VIX goes, the more crazy and pronounced the moves are in both directions. But most of the time, an increasing VIX makes for a falling or bearish market. So the main thing is that like the market's about to get a whole lot crazier, especially as we get closer into this election. And when you couple that with, in today's instance, chip news, or quite frankly, any other news or earnings announcements, it could get even more volatile than normal.
Yeah, it definitely can. And I know, Mike, a lot of people are like, well, hey, how can I actually take advantage of this volatility going up? And of course, there's ways to do that, as in like playing put options. Of course, as the options become more expensive and, the stocks start falling, puts will start to shoot up in value in a pretty crazy way. So that's one way to do it. And if you're looking at some type of play on volatility itself, I know a lot of people like to look at UVXY for shorter term opportunities. And it was up 5% today, which is pretty good. But, from the low of day to the high, right around 5%. So overall, that's a pretty good move by UVXY. And, some of those options can be pretty good on UVXY as well. And whenever you look at the daily, I know a lot of people are like, wow, UVXY sucks, right? This thing, all it does is go down, but it's a leveraged ETF. In the short term, the moves can be pretty exponential. Like back in April, whenever we saw the market dip, UVXY popped up 34%, which is pretty respectable.
Absolutely, and the crazier the market moves, the crazier UVXY moves. So keep a close eye on this one going forward. But Tom, as we look at SPY right now, we're still very close to all-time highs in the grand scheme of things, but it's hard to deny that today was a pretty tough day. So what are the key levels to watch going into tomorrow?
Yeah, so in the short term, as the SPY's falling, I'm really watching this 555 to 556 support. I'm going to draw a red arrow to kind of like signify this support on the chart. I have a lot of supports on SPY, right? I chart this one quite a bit, but that area right there, I'm going to circle it in blue as well. We saw a lot of chop there multiple different times on the way up with SPY. So in the short term, I'm definitely watching that. I really had a support plotted today right around 556.80, and that was pretty close to the low of day today. So for tomorrow, I think like 555.50 will be first up on watch for me. Underneath there, 555 even, and then 554.25 underneath there. And you can see all those lines that I'm marking in blue right now. But that's what I'm watching for support, Mike. As resistance, we saw a lot of hits recently around 560. And as we dropped under there today, that was a pretty good bearish signal. So I'm going to use that as a solid resistance for tomorrow.
Sounds good. And while today was definitely a tough day, in the grand scheme of things, today wasn't even like all that insane. It's like, I remember back in the COVID crash days, Tom, instead of seeing a 1.4% down day with SPY, we would see like down days of like 10, or you could say like 8%, or in some instances, even worse. Like I remember at one point, like especially towards the I guess you could say second half of the crash, SPY was closing down almost 10% on the day. So while the market's moving in a crazy way, again, it can get a whole lot crazier. And if historical averages are any tell, that volatility is set to increase pretty consistently throughout the next couple of months, as we just showed the graphic related to VIX. But good stuff there, Tom. And we also can't forget about the pretty exciting earnings for tomorrow either.
Yeah, so for tomorrow, it's going to be a pretty big day. Taiwan Semiconductors is reporting before the market opens. I know we already mentioned that one quite a bit in the video, but it's a very important stock. One of the biggest stocks out there. They even make chips for other companies like Nvidia, for example. People don't even realize, I don't think, how complex these chips are and how certain things get contracted out and etc. It's very interesting. But TSM will be huge before the market opens. In after hours, we'll have Netflix be reporting. And Mike, Netflix is one of those bigger tech stocks that a lot of people like to look to for the streaming sector, right? I know Disney moves sometimes depending on Netflix subscribers and stuff. So we'll have to see, but it's going to be an interesting day tomorrow for the earnings, that's for sure.
Sounds good. And then how about the economic schedule?
Yeah, 1 hour before the market opens, we have initial jobless claims coming out. Then we do have a couple Fed speakers, but pretty much that's it for the schedule tomorrow.
All right, so it's kind of boring. So yeah, earnings are definitely going to be the main event for tomorrow, but let's start talking about some setups and predictions. A stock I'm continuing to look at in a bullish way is ExxonMobil. I know we talked about this one quite a bit over the past couple of videos, but ExxonMobil had a pretty solid day today, and we even saw crude oil just by itself have a pretty big bullish move, which is awesome to see. But basically, ExxonMobil has been continuing to trend in a bullish way, and we've been seeing a handful of bullish flows in the energy sector overall, which is awesome. And as we look at ExxonMobil, it's one of those stocks where, like, when it trends, it tends to trend for, a couple weeks at a time, assuming that the, trend is strong enough and actually a real trend. And ExxonMobil has been moving in a very good way, and any pullbacks that it has been having have been pretty quick to rebound. So while ExxonMobil obviously won't be green every single day, I definitely like the reward to risk ratio with this one going forward. So either way, ExxonMobil is definitely on my upside radar.
Yeah, I'll definitely be watching it over the next couple days as well. The way oil moved today was pretty significant. Whenever crude moves like this, why not watch it in the short term? It's starting to get back to those recent highs. So I'm definitely going to be watching the oil stocks. I know you talked about it yesterday as well. But with my first stock, I'm looking at Kraft Heinz today. I know this is not the most popular stock out there. Definitely no Nvidia by any means, that's for sure. But Kraft, we all know what they sell, like ketchup. They're into like mayo and a whole bunch of different brands and stuff, right? They've been doing a lot of different things. But nonetheless, Kraft is what I would consider like a value stock, right? Like they have a decent dividend. It's a stock that mainly I just buy the dip on with shares and hold. But in the short term, it's coming up off of this support very well and it's starting to reverse off of this dip in a very good way also. So I'm loving the price action in the short term. I'm going to keep looking for more good inflows and more great momentum to the upside. And for swings, Kraft can actually be pretty good on a day-over-day basis. Like I know that you might not think that Kraft is a stock that moves very much, right? But some of those options that expired this week ended up going up like 1,000% today for like the 3350 strikes. The 34 strikes were up like 800%. So no shortage of movement on the options, that's for sure.
Like you said, the options on this one move quite a bit, but Tom, no one wants to trade Kraft Heinz. Everyone wants to trade the latest, greatest AI semiconductor EV stock. But another thing worth noting with this one, Tom, is that in the same way we've been seeing a pretty strong rotation into small caps, like with IWM over the past couple trading days, we're also seeing a rotation into stocks that just haven't moved that much to the upside in the short term. And while Kraft is certainly not like a small cap stock, it definitely fits into that category in the sense that it's one of those stocks that just hasn't had much love over the past year. So keep a close eye on it going forward. And another stock I'm watching pretty closely right now is LLY. So LLY has been one of the most popular stocks over the past couple of years, especially as the weight loss boom has just been exploding. LLY and NVO have been some of the two top companies to really capitalize off of like the, again, like the weight loss boom. And in the same way, we're seeing a lot of big tech stocks start to pull back as they've just ran up so much. We're also starting to see other stocks like LLY start to pull back, and we're just seeing like a giant wide scale rotation. So I'm going to continue to look at LLY in a bearish way going forward. It is up so much, and we're seeing like a nice shift in momentum here, and I really like the reward to risk ratio in a bearish sense. You know, in the worst case scenario, the stock just resumes its uptrend, but in the best case scenario, we see a widespread flush of this stock. And as we know, stocks normally take the stairs up and the elevator down. So either way, LLY is on my downside radar.
Yeah, that's a pretty crazy looking stock in the short term. It's been moving up a ton, but as we know, pullbacks do happen on these stocks, and the way that it's moved up has actually been very awesome here over this year. It almost looks like Nvidia on the chart, right? I know a lot of people might not think of something like LLY, having that type of power, but it definitely is a very powerful stock, and it's getting a lot of volatility right here, Mike, especially today with that pullback. I'll definitely be watching it to the downside in the short term as well. With my next stock, I'm going with a more popular one than Kraft. I know you guys are probably like, thank God, but it's Apple this time, right? Apple's a very popular stock. We all know Apple. Looking at the resistance in the short term, I'm watching 230. If we end up really breaking out above 230 tomorrow, I think we could see a bit of a recovery, but I'm mainly looking for a rejection of 230 and continuation to the downside. And I'm actually looking at the book map with Apple as well. So 230 was pretty big, and you can see there's a lot of resistance up around 232, which was just above the high of this morning. So I'm really going to keep watching these bigger resistances here on Apple, and for like some good targets to the downside, 225 seems like a pretty decent support here in the short term. There was quite a few shares stacked up there around the end of the day. So I'm going to keep looking for a nice flush out of these tech stocks, Mike. I'll keep watching Apple to the downside, but then again, if we do end up seeing a big rip above like 230 and then 232, I will adapt back up, but I don't know. With the way the market's been moving lately, I don't think we'll see that.
Alrighty, well, it's now about that time for today's momentum plays, and with today's first one, we have MU to the downside.
Yeah, the chip stocks were brutal. Micron's having a brutal close here under 120. If they end up breaking under 118.50, then keep watching them down.
All right, with the next one, we have SoFi to the upside.
Yeah, SoFi is one of those stocks that's being rotated into right now. They actually have a really good high of day, posting up around $7.91. So if we see a clear break there, and then watch $8, but I will say, just watch that $8 resistance. It'll be nice to have a good break above there, too.
All right, and then with the last one, we have Tesla for both directions.
TSLA. So they have a pretty good support in the short term, right around 246. If they break under there, then keep watching them to the downside. If they're able to get back above the 252 resistance, then go ahead and watch them back up.
All right, so we have the upside level for a potential move higher. We have the downside level for a potential move lower. This is with Tesla. Don't forget about the upside level with SoFi, and then the downside level with MU. But these three stocks are on watch for potential day trades tomorrow, if and only if they break through the levels Tom listed. The stronger and more consistent that the price action is, the stronger and the better that these setups become. So ideally, we want to see a break through the levels listed and then a continuation in that direction. But if, like I said, if the levels don't break, then do not feel the need to force the setup. But good stuff there, Tom. And let's jump right into today's $666,000 big money trade. And that's a weird number for today's big money trade. But looking at the ticker, it is Carvana, which is CVNA. And basically, this stock definitely took a pretty big hit today as it fell by almost 8%. And the big money entered the 115 strike put options that expire on October 18th of 2024. Carvana has been a stock that has been ripping ever since 2023. Basically, Carvana from the bottom of 2023 until today has just exploded from like, you could say like $4 a share all the way up to highs of around $145 a share. But then when you zoom out even more, Tom, that's when it gets bad. You could see like from the end of 2021, like in like September, this stock was run once in like the $380 range. So it has definitely had its fair share of volatility. But the big money is clearly looking at this one in a bearish way right now. These put options are a little bit far out of the money, which is a little bit of a concern. But these put options do have some time to them, which is good. Basically, I really like the risk reward here. But my biggest concern is how far out of the money these options are. Again, the reward to risk ratio is good. It's just important to be aware of the fact that like if these options do not go in the money, at least somewhat close to the expiration date, that's when that theta decay will really kick in and start to decay in like a truly exponential way. So either way, keep a close eye on this one going forward. And Tom, I think it's been a little while since we've seen a put play like this one.
Yeah, and I don't know about that number, 666,000. I actually really like the setup, but the number scares me. But no, I'm just kidding. But whenever I look at Carvana here, I'm looking at some of these pullbacks that have happened, and I'm like, hey, okay, so like, what are some of these pullbacks that have happened on the way up this year, right? There was a nice like 22% pullback there. We had a pretty nice pullback here, 27%. So let's just take the mean there. Like, let's just say 25%. Let's say there's like another 25% pullback here. Where's that going to put this stock? Somewhere like right around $110. So I'll say like just looking at like the volatility on this stock overall and how much it went up and how much these pullbacks really are, I know that it seems like it's a super far out of the money strike at 115, and don't get me wrong, it's pretty far. But whenever you look at it on a way like hey, like this stock just pulls back, it's pretty volatile, it has pretty big moves, we could see that end up hitting. And like, let's say we get a couple more red days here in the short term, it'll be putting this in a pretty good position, at least in the short term, right? But as we start to get closer to expiration, it will decay if it's not around the money. But I actually like this one quite a bit, Mike, you know, especially with these stocks turning over. This would be one that would definitely be one to take a bit of a hit, right? I can't believe that I just saw it was up like 4,000% from the lows of 2023. Maybe not quite 4,000, but pretty close.
Close enough, right? But
yeah,
with everything being said, I am super excited for the market over these next couple trading days. And honestly, throughout the rest of the year, I really love the way the volatility is increasing. And again, we have that election coming up in a couple months. So that'll just add even more fuel to the fire. And as we look at like the heat map today, what's so exciting is that not only are we seeing like bigger moves, but we're also seeing moves in both directions. Like it's awesome to see some stocks, like let's say JP Morgan, and you could say Chevron and UNH and AbbVie up in pretty big ways, while at the same time we have, you know, some of the big tech stocks like Nvidia, Apple, Amazon, Tesla, Meta, and other ones have pretty big moves to the downside. And what this ultimately makes for is opportunity. Like if this heat map was just, I guess you could say, a sea of gray where nothing was happening, that's where it would be pretty boring and just sad. It would be a sad time to be a trader, but it's the exact opposite right now. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, except for whenever you switch over to the NASDAQ, right? Then it becomes a true sea of red. Thank God the S&P has a little bit of, we'll say exposure to multiple markets, right? Diversification within the S&P. But yeah, it's an exciting time to be a trader, Mike. And, you know, looking at like the volatility going forward, you know, we're at that time of the year where it starts to pick up a little bit, and we're starting to see that start to really play out here in the short term. You know, we even looked at the July chart from yesterday to show that like, hey, you know, we're kind of at the top for July as well. In the middle part of July here, it starts to slow down a little bit. So just keep that in mind too. You know, there's a lot of stuff starting to snowball. Nvidia's chart is getting pretty scary in the short term. Looking at this chart, Mike, like, you know, we're starting to break under this big support around 118 to 120. If we see another good flush tomorrow, that's going to be a pretty good confirmation of that support breaking. So definitely be aware of this, guys. The market's shifting a little bit. Continue to look at things like UVXY and just different opportunities out there like puts and, you know, some of these other stocks like Kraft, Heinz, and even some of the small caps.
There we go. And then reminder, we do have our live event tonight for the Stocked Up Trading Floor members. These weekly live events are some of our most popular events, and they're definitely very anticipated by members. So consider joining us tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. To join, you'll have to be a member of the trading floor. It'll be that first link in the description in the comments down below. There's a pretty big coupon still available, so definitely check that out. But not only do you get access to the weekly live event, events where you get access to all of our bots. You can chat with Tom and myself all day long, access to big money plays on the same day the trade is made, along with many, many other benefits. So consider getting in on the action. It is the place to be if you're into short-term trading. And Tom, while you're in the Discord, let's also give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Chris, in the StockedUp trading floor, that crushed it with SM Bot today. So awesome screenshot there, and keep on rolling. But besides that, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys are as excited as we are about this current market volatility and the volatility that is expected for the rest of the year. But besides that, thank you so much for watching, and let's crush it in the market tomorrow.